no yelling or personal attacks for any reason. We're here to have a civil discussion about the topics that we have presented. And so we just ask that everyone remains very respectful. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started.
A couple more things. Since we do have a limited amount of time, and so for questions, there is going to be a time limit. It's going to be 12 minutes per question.
About 10 to 12 minutes per question.
And then each speaker will be hard limited to 60 seconds to make sure that anyone who wants to speak has the opportunity to. So we'll be keeping time, but with that covered, we can.
All right. So the first question we're going to be talking about is how should the United States respond to the current situation at the southern border? Raise your hand if you want to speak about it. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Should I stand? Are we sitting?
Either up to you.
It's up to you.
Stand. Thank you.
I think the situation at the southern border is like kind of insane. You know, as a tax-paying American, I like knowing that my money is going to productive causes, good uses, and like seeing the use of resources at the southern border by like governors to like build these weird makeshift like borders with storage containers and like janky ass fences and stuff is like kind of embarrassing as like a country. Like I think immigration's good for the border, or at least for the economy and whatnot, and like seeing like a waste of taxpayer money is kind of like, I don't know, it makes me embarrassed as an American.
Correct. Anyone want to respond to that?
I think that we should let as many people into America as we can, but we should see who they all are. I don't think it's fair that people have to go through the southern border to get in. I also don't think it's fair that people adjacent to America have an increased chance to get here. I think that we should do more and spend more money to get people from all over, like African people, Asian people, from all around. But we also should know who these people are and take care of them. Like if they're coming in, they're sick, and especially with like COVID and all these like communicable diseases and such, we should, for their safety and our safety, do that more. And I think how it is currently, where it's just kind of like a no holds barred rush at the border, where you have, wherever there's, you make something illegal, you're still gonna have, just real quick, like people, black markets making money off this, like people do with drugs and people do with human trafficking. And I think that more should be done rather than just a hands-off approach.
All right, thank you for that. Anyone want to respond to that?
Yeah, so, I mean, I agree. Like, the Statue of Liberty says give you your tired, you're poor, you're hungry, you're huddled masses. We should be letting as many people as we can in. If we truly believe that America is a land of opportunity, we should be giving people the opportunity to be here. Now, when people say we need to know who these people are, we need to make sure that their communicable diseases can't spread, that's been a dog whistle used by the right for hundreds of years. Back when Irish people were being disallowed from coming to the country, they said they're going to give us their diseases, right? It's been a consistent dog. I know I'm going to take you up good faith. That's not what you mean, right?
Oh, it just was recently.
Yeah. So, but the problem is that that's been used, and so with the Title 42, which is what Biden's been using and Trump used to block people from coming in. I mean, COVID is not nearly as big a problem as it was. We don't need to be blocking them. COVID is in the country. It won't help by blocking people who need to get in here for asylum by stopping them to get in. And the last point, it is not easy to be an immigrant. I mean, oh my God, I hear, I'm an intern with Catholic Castro, and so I get so many calls about immigration. They've been waiting years to get into this country, and it's not easy.
All right. Do we have any Republicans who want to respond to that? Go ahead.
How exactly are you going to oppose if you're letting more people come in with less checks in terms of all that? How is that going to square with the threat of the narco groups in northern Mexico, especially with the emergence of a lot more violent groups?
Just to go off of that, I think that my biggest problem right off the border is not only, the big issue is we don't know really who's coming in, and we don't really know their backgrounds or where they're coming from. Especially in the last few years or so, we've had a lot of people coming from all over the world. It's not just Mexico. It's not just Central America anymore. They're coming from other countries that are overseas as well. Not only that, but Border Patrol has apprehended individuals at the border who have been charged with homicide, sex crimes, drug crimes. On top of that, they've apprehended a lot of individuals who are on the FBI terror watch list. And I think that the issue really runs deeper. I think that, you know, poor border laws definitely incentivize people to come here and take advantage of those laws. And I mean, just for the sake of American citizens and America, we really have to be careful about who we're letting in. And I mean, this might be controversial, but at the end of the day, like, no one's entitled to come into our country. Just like we're not entitled to walk over to Italy or walk over to Spain and walk in there and demand that they start treating us a certain way. Like, this is our country, this is all of our country. At the end of the day, like, the government should be putting us first and our safety first. And I think that's just, that's what it should be.
I don't understand why there's such a negative connotation with immigrants fleeing the war. Like my dad, he fled war in Syria. The government surrounded his city and they destroyed it, and he had to flee. And that was in 1980. And then he got accepted to the University of Nebraska. He did not know shit about America. And then he lived in Nebraska for 30 years. He was a taxpayer. He voted every election, and he did really good for this country. And I just saying there's a lot of good stories that should be put to light instead of these negative connotations that all immigrants are terrorists. All these on the southern border, they're all part of a drug cartel, etc. Thank you.
I just want to know.
All right.
Hands.
Okay, so similar to what you said, my mom's from Chile. She's a great person. I hate that there is a negative connotation that is spread, for a lot of immigrants that come to this country. My issue with it is I'm for legal immigration. I think a lot of Republicans are. My big stance is against illegal immigration. And, it sucks because we have a lot of people who are fleeing, terrible regimes and terrible circumstances like my mom was when she came here. They had Pinochet in Chile, and it was a very popular system with, military overreach. But, I wish more people like her could come here easy, because I don't think it's hard. I don't think it's easy to come here legally. I think the system is backlogged due to illegal immigration. And so I think we do need reform with regard to, how we make it so people can come here legally. But I think illegal immigration is too big of a problem now, so the backlog's there, so that legal immigration is way too hard. So.
About 4 more minutes on this topic. We'll take Alex.
Thank you. I just wanted to say a quick follow-up to that comment. I fully support legal immigration. I believe we should put tons of resources, as much as we can, into increasing the efficiency of the legal immigration system. However, I do not agree with legal immigration. That's essentially my statement.
Do you want to go? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Sorry, I thought my hand was raised. But I think it's important to make the emphasization when we talk about immigration and the criticisms of illegal immigrants. I think there's a lot of conflation with legal immigration and illegal immigration, and I think the left side of the room loves to take our criticisms of illegal immigrants, people bringing drugs, being violent and shit, and that we're not talking about people who come in the legal way. We're talking about people that completely disrespect the law in the first place by coming here illegally. Their first interaction with the country is breaking the law. And I also want to make it a point that the whole world cannot live here. And that's just the truth. I think we all know that in this room. And additionally, the fact that there is so much desire, this is one of the most immigrated countries in the world. And I think that's important to keep in mind when we realize that America is a great country. And that's why people want to move here. And I hope that curbs some of your criticisms for America. I know you guys have a lot of them.
I like a lot of those points. I agree that America is a great country. I also agree that it's important to make the distinction between legal and illegal immigration. I think it's weird to have this conception of illegal immigration. It's wanting to go from one place and live in a different country, right? You want to become part of another country, right? And America is great because it's built on the backs of immigrants, right? There's maybe a couple 100,000, maybe 1 million people in the United States, in America today, who can be traced back to the original Americas, right? So most people that live in this country are descended from immigrants, right? Whether it be from South America, Asia, or even Europe, right? And I think it's weird to say that someone wanting to be part of this great nation and build its economy and appreciate its melting pot of culture is committing a crime. I think it's weird to tell someone who says, America's great, I want to live there. No, that's illegal.
All right, we'll take one more from our side.
Yeah, I'm actually an international student. I was supposed to be a Florida resident, a permanent resident of this country, but under Trump, processing time was 6 months for a green card in the EB-1A classification. I was supposed to get it through my dad. But then Biden came into power and we had a border crisis. Processing times got extended and now I won't be able to get my green card under my dad. And I did everything the legal way, through the legal way. And it's unfair because I get pushed back to the line because people just walk through the border. And it's unfair, it really is. Because we did everything, we went through background checks, we built a business, that's how we got it, my dad worked hard. Now he's gonna get his green card and I'm not. And that means I have to pay out-of-state tuition, I have to go and apply for H-1B visa after that. Before that, OPT, then after that is an H-1B visa. 2 years after that, I could for a green card, and then 5 years after that, I get my citizenship. I have to do all of that, but I can just walk through the border, get a green card, and then citizenship.
Thank you for that perspective.
One more.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that really sucks. But the way to make sure that everybody has fair and equal treatment is to make sure that everybody has fair and equal treatment. And so we need to expand the laws. We need to make sure that it's more legal to cross the border. We need to put more money into the system. The way to make something more safe is to regulate it, right? When we talk about like marijuana or whatever, we don't see a decrease in deaths when we say you can't have any marijuana. You see an increase in safety when you legalize it, when you make it more accessible, and when you make it more regulated. When you make the border more accessible, because when we, in the 80s, when we had the revolving door system at the border, we saw that people actually left the United States more because they didn't feel they had to get in here and stay trapped. We need the border to be more accessible so that people feel more free to leave too. We saw more people leaving the border when it was a revolving door than we did when it wasn't.
All right. I know we love this question, but we're going to move on to the next one.
And again, raise those hands very high so we can make sure to see you. Don't want to be missing anyone.
So, should the United States be involved in the war between Ukraine and Russia, and to what extent?
And I guess we'll start on this last time?
Yeah.
I think we should be involved to the extent that we are right now. We should be funding Ukraine because Russia is a tyrannical power that's trying to take over another country. And what do we know about America? We hate when people take over our countries, so we should be like, no, you can't do that. We should help fund Ukraine and help them fight off Russia to the extent we are now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I actually kind of agree with your point, and the reason I say that is because, like, we spent $700 billion on our military in the U.S., and, like, we don't want our troops dying in war. Like, everybody criticizes the Iraq war or other wars we've been in the past. And since we don't want our troops dying, by giving money to Ukraine, we're actually preventing our troops from dying, but also stopping Russia getting more of Europe.
Anyone speak against that?
Yeah, I want to talk about more of the context of this war, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm defending Russia necessarily, but the goal of this war is to have Russia restore the land it lost from the Soviet Union's breakup. They're not in some sort of like aggressive conquest. Like they have a legitimate reason here in a way, but the idea that we
quiet, let him speak.
The idea that we should spend $40 billion fucking dollars on this random country across the world is insane. From like both you guys and you guys. That's insane to me. That like we should be spending any of our money at all on like shit that does not even directly like involve me. And I just think that's insane. I think
you in the very back.
I just want to respond to that. So, there's nothing legal about the war. First of all, Ukraine already voted to be out of the Soviet Union once the referendum passed in the 1990s. And there is nothing really right in a conquest that is an invasion of a sovereign nation with its own government. We're beyond that part of human history. We already saw it in World War II. Crises like this should not be resolved by any means other than the talking between both countries, and let alone a whole invasion of a country. So Ukraine already spoke on that fact. Ukraine already voted on that fact. And Ukraine already stated that they want to do not want to be part of Russia or the Soviet Union. Therefore, this is nothing more than a nation invading a nation and violating their sovereignty. Us as the United States, especially seeing as Russia as an adversary, we should be doing everything in our means, including supporting Ukraine. Why? Because that's what they stand for: democracy, freedom, and it's that simple. It's really that simple.
So I'm going to be the middle ground between the two of you here. The issue I have with funding Ukraine is not the fact that we're stopping Russia. I do agree that the war is incorrect for Russia to do. But the issue I have is we invited Ukraine at least twice in the history after it broke up with the Soviet Union to join NATO, and they refused both times or did not have the ability to join the NATO alliance because of their willing to fund their military. Why I still agree with the funding, though, is it's saving us money and saving our troops' lives, because it would cost more money to dismantle all these Bradleys we have left over than it would do just throw them on a ship, hand them over to the Ukrainians and say, well, let's get some battle experience out of it. Let's see if those things actually work. Past defeating import tanks from Russia that had half the stuff missing out during the Iraq War. So there's that kind of necessary evil of this, where if the invasion's happening, it's saving us money, it's saving our troops' lives, we're getting to test out new weapons, new everything, and actually know it will protect our troops' lives and our sovereignty in the future. But also, as them being a nation, I do support their sovereignty, so we should support them also.
Good evening, everybody. Excuse me for that. Good evening, everybody. Excuse me for that. Actually, my English is not so good, but I was born in Soviet Union, for example. And as you know, the question is: should United States be involved? Involved by what? By how? By military or by economically? If you are going to involve this as a military, as an army, how long it could be? Do you know about that? Because the United States doesn't know anything about differences between Ukrainian and historical differences between their crises. It comes from 18th century. Their differences, their crises. That's why I think the United States should be involved by economically only, by just closing all the how does it go, by sanctions, everything else, to keep going in that way. But you know, in Ukraine there is still corruption things, and when you are giving their money to Biden are giving their money, you don't have any reports of this money. That's why you are spending a lot of money again and again and again.
So, I think the way that you prevent war, I agree, with what a lot of you guys are saying, that, Russia should not have invaded Ukraine. I'm not taking Russia's side or anything. But the way you prevent a war, it's peace through strength. And so if you have a president who's very weak, like President Biden, and he makes ambiguous statements months before, the Russia, actually invades Ukraine, how can you project strength and prevent Russia from thinking, okay, if I do invade Ukraine, maybe the United States is going to get involved, maybe they're not, I don't know, but now that Biden's making this ambiguous statement, now I'm going to get the green light to go in. And so Biden made a very ambiguous statement just right before, I don't remember the exact words to be honest with you, but he made a very ambiguous statement right before the invasion, and it emboldened Russia to go through. What the United States needs is strong leadership, and now what we're faced with is now we have to support Ukraine because we had a leader who was so weak that he emboldened the Russians to invade.
Yeah. So I want to say, you say it's strength through, or what was it?
Peace through strength.
Peace through strength. Thank you very much. Where does strength originate with a nation? I would say unity. So I think that just in general, the fact that we're so polar and divided on this is sort of an indication to any world government, Russia, wherever, that we're kind of failing as a country and we're kind of weak as a country because we're disunited along all these party lines, partisan lines. So, yeah, I just want to say that, to say that Biden is like somehow the guy that caused this is like, I don't know, I feel like that regardless of which party got the presidency, this shit wasn't like, it wasn't like we were gonna stop this, you know what I'm saying? It's not really, it's not, yes, yeah.
So I believe that it was important to originally support and fund Ukraine, but I believe that it's gone out of the amount that it shouldn't have been. Like, we shouldn't be still funding them at this point. Honestly, we don't even see half of what is even going on in Ukraine. Like, who knows if there's even like much going on over there. And we need to be supporting our own country. Like, I don't know if everyone's been seeing all these trains being derailed in like Ohio and many other states, like not just in Ohio. The news is hardly reporting on this. Many trucks are like being knocked over with lethal gas getting out of them. Drinking water is unsafe. And like nobody's been doing anything about this. Like, who knows? We might be getting threatened ourselves right now, and we're focusing on Ukraine. We need to focus on our own country, protect and like fund our soldiers to keep us safe.
Of President Biden. I do understand, I am a constructivist in the field of IR, so I do think that the justification that would be used is his general belief why he actually invaded. But that being said, we also have to look at this from the standpoint of the United States. You said that you want a strong United States. I agree with what he just said. We were idiots when we came to Iraq and Vietnam, right? But that's the point. Russia is our adversary. We are the global hegemon. We want to make sure that they do not rise up within their power. And one of the ways that we do that is making sure that Ukraine is not a successful war to them, but is their Vietnam. That is how we are strong as a military and how we exert our power. It is just straight up fact that we need to economically, not through military means, but economically support Ukraine within this war in order to secure our power that we have on the global stage.
All right, great conversation on that topic. Sean, next question.
Next question is, what should healthcare in the United States look like in the future? Should healthcare be universal, private, or some of both? Anyone want to start this question off?
Hands.
I'll start it off. Free as a point of service. I mean, when we talk about, in our capitalistic society, when we have to pay for like really important things just for us to live, it means that those with less have to pay more and usually can't get it to those with more, right? To a rich person, however much money you have to spend on your health care is less relative to their actual money, relative to the actual wealth than it is to a poor person. If both people spend $200 on medical expenses, somebody with only $200 in the bank account, as more than 50% of Americans don't have, is way more to them than somebody with, $2 billion in their bank account. And the second point is that, we see it every other major civilized country. Germany had, 1887, has universal health care, has some kind of health care for the masses. Yeah, this is good start.
Just because another country has something that we should adopt, and Germany also had the Nazis. And then I would also
Hey, let's let her speak.
Speak up, please. Why do Democrats and the left more broadly believe it's okay to steal the labor and resources to provide the healthcare? And don't tell me that it's just a bunch of big corporations, because I would like you to tell me what the salary is of a nurse and explain to me why.
$1 billion, Jeff Bezos, give a million people $1,000. That is life-changing. Half of all reasons, the reason that half of all people go into bankruptcy is due to healthcare expenses. And the reason why healthcare is so expensive is because 20% of all the money that's spent on healthcare goes straight to administration, which could be resolved when it's nationalized. You can't, to figure out who your doctor is and what you can get from your doctor requires you to have like basically a degree in healthcare administration. And the last point is that, wait, what was I? No, but there's like a fifth point to it. Whatever, it's okay. I'll pass it on.
All right, Ashley, go ahead. So when it comes to the future of healthcare in the United States, healthcare in the market right now is the way that it is because of the public involvement. Regulation takes the form of raising the cost of goods or preventing goods from being used. So whenever you have an economic transaction that takes place, both whenever you have someone come in and put regulations on that economic transaction, it's going to lead to higher prices. Whenever you have market monopolization by the state, it's going to lead to higher prices and a worse end product. That's what we see with universal healthcare. That's what we see with our regulated market. Private market would free up the market. It would bring down prices. It would have it at a higher cost. The history of regulation of the market in the United States has been a terrible one. It's led to the situation we are now. And the solution to the healthcare crisis is to free the market.
That one, to build off Ben's point that he made about the administrative costs, I'm actually in the process of getting an insurance license right now. What a fucking awful decision that was. But, you know, they have this state mandated course where you have to learn all about, you know, insurance so that you can get a license to sell people healthcare insurance, right? And all it goes on and on about all these special ways they've come up with over the years to save people money on premiums. But, I mean, to be frank, that is a load of horse shit. Because private insurance companies, especially as it relates to healthcare, they don't actually care about keeping people's premiums low. They don't care about maintaining their health. They care about making money. All right, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we are talking about people's actual physical well-being. The primary concern should not be making money. This is an example where, to be honest, there is really no better option than a state whose primary concern is the well-being of its people to administer. It's simply not something that a private market can handle, in my opinion, at all, but especially not in majority. Pardon my French for the curse.
The issue that I see with all this talk about like a state-run system or a single-payer system is that, like he was saying before, is that you introduce inefficiency when the government takes it over. So if you have a single-payer system, what ends up happening is you create a shortage. Because you essentially have three options when the state comes in and says, this is how much healthcare will cost. So option one, it sets that equilibrium above what the market value truly is, in which case you're not achieving anything. Option number two is you're setting it at equilibrium, which is where the market will put it anyway. Option three is you're creating, essentially you're setting it below the equilibrium value. And if you set it below the equilibrium value, you produce a shortage. There's too much demand, not enough supply, and that's why you end up everywhere we've seen a government-run system, like in Canada, like in Great Britain, you see a two-tiered system where you have very, very low quality of health relative to privatized systems.
Another important thing to help consider when looking at healthcare is that you have a government, and especially with past programs, which hasn't always been so trustful or accepting of its own people. CIA has conducted many experiments on the people. So another question that's very valid to bring up is, do you even trust the government in handling the healthcare issue? Are they actually responsible enough to actually look out for the healthcare and well-being of the citizens? Because if the past decades and centuries have shown, they really aren't.
Trust private corporations, though? That's like a full binary. You don't have to trust them in order to understand. The government's the only one with the monopoly on force, and you need the government to step in certain situations. I mean, this is something that Republicans and Democrats used to agree on. Richard Nixon and Theodore Roosevelt were as Republican as it got, and they were both in favor of a universal health care system. I mean, same here too, exactly. I mean, universal health care doesn't have to be a right or left thing. If you go to other countries, like with the Tories in Britain, who are conservative, they look at you like a debate over this. This is something they settled after World War II, because it turned out after that war, it didn't matter what political affiliation you had, you were left usually in a really bad situation. And if you were a conservative or a Democrat, it doesn't matter, because if you have cancer or if you have a condition that you can't take care of yourself with, then what's going to happen? I mean, at the end of the day, this whole talk about free markets, it's great in the abstract. I have a father of mine who spent his entire life working very hard in order to make sure that my sister and my mom and I could take care of ourselves. He worked as a security guard at a hospital where his health care was tied to his employer, and he needed to have a kidney transplant. It drained our financial savings. So this idea of just working hard and then everything's going to be great, that doesn't fit it for everybody. And a universal healthcare system would benefit everyone, including poor white people in the middle of the country, minorities on the coast. It's something that everyone would win on.
About 5 more minutes left on this topic. We'll do Jay.
Okay. I'm sorry, but were you speaking for the left or for the right?
I'm a right-winger who's for universal health
Okay.
care.
Okay, I like America. I think America's really cool, and I like Americans. Does everybody in here like America and Americans? I think it's basically say that most Americans are workers. They have jobs, right? And as has been demonstrated by previous speakers, healthcare costs just absolutely ruin you financially, right? Having horrible access to healthcare on the part of Americans and on the part of workers just is horrible to our economy. If you're running a business, right, do you want to have to worry about all of your employees potentially having to call out for like a week or a month because like, oops, I have to get a kidney transplant? That's terrible. No, I don't want to have to worry about like health issues for my employees, right? It drains our economy. And most projections of a single-payer healthcare system demonstrate that the cost to the American government would be cheaper than what we spend right now, right? As Jonathan demonstrated before, insurance companies are bloated and terrible to interact with, right? And I'm not saying, alleviate all responsibility to the state, but I think a route to a Medicare for all healthcare system would be far better than the nightmare we live in today.
I think you nailed it. I think that we shouldn't trust the government. And what the problem is with any type of healthcare system, especially in America, is it's a medical industrial complex that makes a lot of money off of Americans and people being sick. They want us medicated. They don't want you taking mushrooms and being cool for 6 months. They want you on those SSRIs every single day. When they look at adding people to the roles of getting health care, they're looking at that with dollar signs. When COVID hits, there are people that are smiling when hospitals are at capacity. They want to pay nurses less and then take more profit from the top. And this kind of ties into what the real thing is in Ukraine. It has nothing to do with the military-industrial complex making money off of essentially killing people. So what we need to be cognizant of is not letting the government then mandate where it's the only option. I think that people will want good health care for themselves so that the market will give doctors. But if you say doctors can only do this and they only prescribe that and this is the only way of medicine and perpetuating failed things, as you see now that the problem is they're just making a lot of money. It's not about helping people, it's about money.
We'll get you in the Russia stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that point. It is about money, and that's because of the private system, the capitalistic system that commodifies healthcare. That's it. You hit it on the head.
Well, Ethan.
Yeah, I come from a country called Trinidad and Tobago, and we have universal healthcare, and it's actually really bad back at home. Trusting your government to run your healthcare is one of the worst things you could do. They tend to hand it over to private companies to buy pharmaceuticals, which they pay double than what we would pay for it. So you have more taxpayers' money being wasted by the government. We had one of the #1 healthcare systems in the Caribbean when it was privatized. When it was taken over by the government and became public, it became one of the worst in the Caribbean. So as you said, universal healthcare, just because they have it in Germany, it works good, why shouldn't we have it? It doesn't work good in Trinidad and Tobago. So every country is different, so you can't use that explanation too. Yeah.
All right, we have 50 seconds, so we'll get the last speaker on this. They're quick, and I will call.
No, it's okay. If you want to have it, you have it.
We'll make the decision because we have to do
I'll do something short. I think that the governments will run it better. I mean, you just look at examples in Europe. They're doing it great. It's better than it is here, and we should look towards them. It's just, they do it so much better than we do. It's just so...
I'm going to snatch the rest of that. When we talk about monopolies, yes, private monopolies do hurt consumers. Public monopolies have been shown to help consumers. The Tennessee Valley Authority, with electricity, so many poor people in the Tennessee Valley and that whole area would not have access to electricity. The government provided them with electricity at a much cheaper rate than any private business would. Monopolies by the government tend to help consumers because they care about people over profits.
All right, we are going to move on. All right,
We're gonna move on to the next question. Next question is, should minors under the age of 18 be allowed to pursue and receive gender-affirming care and surgery? Everyone quiet down, please.
Yes. Quiet down, please.
Go ahead.
I don't think minors should be allowed to pursue gender-affirming surgeries. You're making a life-altering decision that can't be undone, and studies have kind of shown that the biggest population of people that are wanting to pursue these surgeries are biological females around middle school, high school age, and that's kind of the time that, find me one girl that age that is not insecure in their body, and we're telling them, you're right, your body is the problem, you should go medically change it in a way that can't be undone. If you're over 18 and you make that decision, that's fine, you're an adult, you do what you want. But I think that letting children do it opens up a really dangerous gate to them having a lot of regret, and now they really have medical and health issues associated with that. So I don't think that minors really ever should be allowed to pursue that kind of
I'm actually going to self-insert on this again. I personally don't really find the argument that, it's too major of a decision to have any credence. I can run and join the military at the age of 17, and if we want to talk about long-lasting health problems for your life, if that's a big enough decision that we can make at 17 to go get shot at the behest of Congress, let them have the damn health care. So,
I want to respond to that. I personally don't think that they should be allowed to receive care or surgeries. Puberty blockers, first of all, the same puberty blockers that they give to pedophiles to chemically castrate them is what they're giving to children to block their puberty. Second of all, there's no long-term studies on how these actually affect children in the long run. And just in terms of like the surgery, this is like irreversible stuff, like she said. This is not stuff that, children can't even consent to sex, and yet we're allowing them to chop their body parts off. We're allowing them to be pumped full of hormones and stuff that actually stops their natural production, which has been shown and actually proved to lead to slower growth rate and lower bone density, which just opens up a whole other door of problems. Second of all, healthcare professionals who talk about this, they talk about it in one light, and that light is how much money it brings in. And when you put children on this stuff, you're creating patients for life. And it's really interesting how the left wants to talk about big pharma and they're so greedy and this and that. Well, this is just another extension of what they're doing and their greediness. They're willing to mutilate children in order to create lifelong patients who are going to need to be dependent on medicines and care for the rest of their life because you have literally stopped the natural progression of their body. And it's just, it goes much deeper than that, but I want to let everyone else speak.
Yeah, okay. So I really want to clear up a few things because there's like a lot of really bad information that just went around and a lot of really incorrect stuff. So there's a clear distinction between gender-affirming care and gender-affirming surgeries, right? Gender-affirming surgeries are any kind of medical transition, mastectomy, gynoplasty, whatever, right? This isn't being like peddled to children, right? If you look at the research, and it's decades old, it goes back to like the 1800s. Historically, actually, we've been set back in our gender research after the Nazis burned down the like world gender and sexuality research station as like their first, kind of power play. And part of that gender-affirming care, alternatively, is social transition, referring to children by their preferred name, right? Their preferred pronouns. And puberty blockers, right? Puberty blockers have been used for decades, right? Not just to chemically castrate pedophiles. That's like a weird kind of emotional appeal, right? But, right, there's a years-long process to allow a child to even like socially or like get on puberty blockers to transition, right? They have to go through years and hoops of like psychiatric evaluation.
I would just like to respond to that really quick, and that's actually not true. There's a whistleblower who just came out. She was working for a transgender healthcare center, identifies as a queer woman, married to a trans man, so it just eliminates any bias there. But she actually came out and said these children were receiving these drugs after 1 or 2 visits with a therapist, and then were receiving the actual drugs after 1 meeting with an endocrinologist. And so, like, once again, this just goes to show like how quickly they're willing to peddle children through the system in order to make more money. And not only that, but she went as far to say the doctors that she worked under were completely dismissing all of the health effects that were happening to these children. And then when many of them wanted to detransition or actually stop their care, the doctors actually completely left them out, completely said they weren't going to deal with it anymore, and just kind of pushed them to the side. And if that doesn't show like really how they truly see this field, I mean.
Can you like tell us who the name
I actually can. I have it right here.
What's her name?
Her name is Jamie Reed. She is a woman left. According to her, she's actually more left than Bernie Sanders. Married to a trans man. She worked for the Washington University Transgender Center at St. Louis Children's Hospital.
Can you just spell it? I just want to know the name.
Jamie and Reed.
R-E-E or I?
R-E-E-D.
Okay.
I added a little extra time for that.
So I'm going to go back I know I've kind of already discussed it before, but this is not really an issue that should probably be handled with the government. Regardless of anyone's opinions, this is really something that a parent and their child, and really probably cutting out social media, because that's a big influence for a lot of reasons why people do feel more insecure about their body. You really can't trust the government on this issue to begin with, and the government should really not get involved to begin with. And then it should really just be, we need more information all around just so that everyone makes better, more informed decisions, so that in the long run, everyone can kind of successfully get what they need from the system.
Okay. To respond to that, they want more information to like make better decisions. Do you think that DeSantis' move and getting like the ages and the all that kind of stuff is like a good direction towards figuring that out?
Personally, I do not, only because I believe that DeSantis has some more concerning, more power-grabbing tendencies. There should be more research into it, but I do not believe that DeSantis is the right person to pursue that.
Go right ahead.
Something that I think we should all just consider is like eliminate the under the age of 18 thing as a whole. What are we even considering criteria to come into a hospital or doctor's office and get gender affirming care and surgery? Because if I walked into a hospital right now and told them that I was just unhappy with my hand, like I just didn't really like how it made me feel and stuff, and I wanted to go on, they would think I was crazy and send me to the psych ward. But I can walk into a hospital and say, I don't really like my vagina, like, can we swap this out, can we do something about this? They would have this whole different conversation with me, so.
First off, 5 minutes left on this topic. I'm going to self-insert real quickly. I'm actually submitting a resolution to student government about this issue because of that I've researched it very carefully. We are talking about this as if it's a very common thing, as if it's fatal to children. I want to make clear, out of a database of 42 million adult Americans, less than 1,200 of them received any form of gender-affirming care surgery. 1,200 out of 42 million adult Americans. And I know Ben wanted to say something, so I wasn't.
Yeah, I've been a little bit in this issue for a while. Leading the movement to get USF to stop sending the care. So first of all, with that aggregated data, that is simply civil rights breach. You're in no health study ever do they take data without consent. I mean, it's simply wrong. I mean, like, no matter what your beliefs are, whether trans people should exist, it's simply wrong to take people's data without their consent. Second of all, to insinuate that being trans is equivalent to not liking your hand is the definition of transphobic. People who are trans are trans because they just are the gender they like. It's not like, oh, I don't like this cut on my hand. It's not what it's like. I mean, like, I can't fully experience it. I can't fully describe it because I'm not trans. But it's not just waking up a day and deciding that you don't like your hand, right? And so this care is actually necessary. 56, people who don't get gender-affirming care are 56% more likely to commit suicide. And the people who do get gender-affirming care, only 1 to 2% of them regret it afterwards, and it's mostly because of social stigma, which people like you create.
It's a question of whether or not it's wrong to do this to children. And so when we're discussing whether or not the government should be regulating this, we trust the government to regulate things like child abuse, to prosecute child abuse. And so I do think we need to ask the question, is this abusive to children to, like Justin mentioned, allow them to make all these decisions that have these horrific downstream effects? Then also I think it's interesting on this side of the aisle, we're hearing that this isn't really happening that much, it's not that common, but also that we should be teaching the gender unicorn in schools, and we should be telling kids that you might not actually be a girl or a boy. So it seems like your position is it's not happening, and we should be so happy that it's happening.
Let's just
weigh the impacts for a second on body dysmorphia, on gender dysmorphia for a second. When you're going through something like that, you can go through depression, you can go through suicide. All of those things come into effect when you have something like gender dysmorphia. So let's just take a second and recognize that. It's not about the gender unicorn or not liking your vagina. It's about having the right to care for yourself.
Okay, so what it all comes down to, what is the definition of love? And love, what it really means is to, okay, so love, true love means willing the good in the other person. So when you really care about somebody, there's the old saying, your real friend is the person who tells you when you don't look good or when you did something wrong. So when you have somebody who is, they're very depressed and they're like, well, I don't know if I'm a girl or a boy or this or that, and they're having these thoughts, the person who really cares about them is the person who's going to tell them the truth. The person who's going to guide them through that and say, okay, you're a man, or if it's a girl, you're a girl, okay? And to guide them through that and to actually help them. You don't tell a little kid, you don't indulge their fantasies if it's something that's totally wrong. And we shouldn't be doing this for children, and it shouldn't be done for adults either. Transgenderism, it is a mental disorder.
Okay, I think it's really weird to hear that straw man about gender unicorns because I don't think anybody mentioned anything about gender unicorns. I didn't. You can stop talking.
Okay.
That was really rude.
That's fine. So nobody's peddling this to children that we need to teach children to transition or whatever. And I think it's interesting. Trans people who go through the process of transitioning, like I said before, they have to go through years of actually psychiatric evaluations. I want to appeal to all the women in the room. Have you ever gone to a doctor or anything and had them not take you seriously?
Yes.
Cool. That's what trans women experience, or even trans men, just consistently, right? They get just gaslighted that what they think is going on with their body is not the case. So if you experience that as a cis woman, imagine what happens with trans people when they say, hey, I'm in the wrong body.
Also, if somebody comes up to me and says, look, I know you like the menorah, but trust me, you're not a Jew. That person's fucked up.
No. All right. Why are you talking only about adults? This question about under 18. This question about under 18. We gotta agree that kids are stupid than adults. That's all.
I'm a camp counselor. Yeah.
That's all. They cannot make a decision.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Thank you everyone for participating. So who is responsible for the inflation in the United States and what actions have contributed? What is the Republican Party's plan for solving this, and what is the Democrat Party's plan for solving this? So obviously if you're a Democrat, you can answer for that. If you're a Republican, you can answer for that. But go.
I think inflation is just a problem all around the world. I mean, you look at every other country, they're dealing with this. Actually, the United States is doing better than most other countries in inflation. So to blame it on who's president just isn't really realistic. We just came out of a global pandemic, and the markets just got so messed up. And I don't think the Republicans have a plan. They're too focused on the culture war, but that's a story for another day. But I'll pass it on to someone else.
All right. Who hasn't spoken yet? Go ahead.
So the general rule of thumb when it comes to inflation is that the top people always get blamed when things go wrong. They always get blamed. And so Joe Biden, being the president right now, he gets the blame for most of this because he came in at a time when we were still going through the pandemic and the vaccines were starting to come out. All we had to do was just kind of go in and say, here's the vaccine, everything's all there. But instead, he started to print more and more money and, in a sense, cause more inflation because of the dollar value that's being now not really so much worth anything anymore. So in a sense, it doesn't make any sense to keep printing out money and keep spending out more money on things, on worthless programs that quite frankly don't have anything to do with solving inflation.
Okay, you know what? Yeah, it is Joe Biden's fault for inflation. It's his fault that gas prices lowered for 78 days straight. It is fault that inflation has been going down and it's only 6-point-something% now. Yeah, now it's Trump's fault that the inflation started. Now, COVID wasn't Trump's fault, except for how bad it got in America was partially Trump's fault. He had the PPP loans, right, that let companies take loans out, and then he chose not to forgive them, sending trillions of dollars into the economy and then bringing it back. Now, the thing is, I'll honestly agree that actually it is partially Biden's fault too that inflation got that bad. But that is a necessary thing. We can't get through inflation by pretending it doesn't exist. We needed to stimulate the economy. We had entered a huge depression after COVID, and we needed people to be able to afford anything, right? I mean, they literally had,
I just want to bring this into the topic. I feel like we're talking about Trump, Biden, and we're kind of stuck in this dichotomy, talking about inflation. Are we forgetting that when Obama took office, our national debt was 10 trillion, and when he left office, it was 20 trillion? Are we forgetting that? He's the king of inflation here, I think. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
We'll take that.
I appreciate your point, but it has been proven in multiple different studies that debt ratios have little to nothing to do with inflation rate. That politicians used to be so crazy about debt, we thought that all of a sudden all of our economic problems are going to go away when Bill Clinton got rid of the deficit, or balanced the budget, right? But guess what? We still had our economic problems, so that's not the issue. I actually have a different stance. I think that the party that's most responsible for inflation are the big businesses that exist out there. Which, I mean, granted, when we have a profit-driven economy, you can't blame them. If they're fixed with a situation where they have the ability to raise gas prices, for example, or other forms of prices, they're going to do it, even if that form of raising prices is arbitrary. And for that reason, they are the parties that are most responsible. I also think that Biden is responsible for some degree because I think he should have been harsher in crunching down upon those businesses who are taking advantage of this situation.
Go ahead, Jack.
So another major player in inflation has been for a very long time the Federal Reserve. When they keep printing money and it devalues the currency, enough said.
Just to go off of that, we printed 40% of the money that's in circulation now in the last couple of years, and we did that to fund things that we passed during the pandemic. And I'm the first one to admit, Trump did that. He passed the CARES Act, $2.2 trillion. We could not afford that. Biden continued to pass this stuff when he was in office, and they continued printing money, so trillions and trillions of dollars. When you print so much money, it devalues the currency. That is an economic fact that no one can deny. And so, I mean, of course, there was only one congressman who voted against the CARES Act in 2020, Thomas Massey. He was a Republican, and he said this is going to lead to the largest wealth transfer in history. The tweet is still up on his Twitter. You can go look at it. He was the only one who spoke out against it. And so now you have a lot of people who say, oh, well, big businesses are making record profits. No crap. There's a record number of money in the economy. So yeah, they are making record profits, but that's because there's 40% more money than there was, even 3 years ago. So of course our money's going to be worth less. Of course inflation's going to be so bad.
So I'm glad to see some acknowledgement that free lunch economics was a bipartisan problem. Another episode I'd like to take us back to is I remember the Bernie Sanders types yelling at Biden a lot because he wanted to give $1,400 checks and Trump was saying $2,000 checks in the December of, I think it was 2020. But really what I'd like to pivot to is some examples I've seen of their plan is Jim Justice in West Virginia just gave checks to people. DeSantis, who is the standard bearer of the party, passed a series of tax cuts. These are stimulative policies. This is not getting serious about inflation. What I think they're not telling us is that their plan is massive cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Now, I'd welcome you guys to challenge me on that. Their party wouldn't admit it when they were in the State of the Union. So I would like to hear, if that's not your plan, what your plan is to fight inflation.
Ashton, go ahead.
So first I want to start out by saying that Keynesianism, the idea that we can just print money infinitely and just be able to manage the economy with these levers of quantitative easing and all of that is false. The idea of recession is that there's not enough money circulating around in the economy. The idea of inflation is that there's too much money circulating around in the economy. Stagflation under Jimmy Carter and somewhat what we're experiencing right now is the existence of both at the same time. So their hypothesis is absolutely false. Inflation is not the CPI itself. The CPI measures the effect of the increase in prices in inflation. Inflation is just the increase in the money supply, and the one fault of that is the Federal Reserve from the increase in the money supply by affecting the interest rates, which is the cost of money, the cost of getting loans. So when you have that problem of the Federal Reserve, the only solution is to end the Federal Reserve.
5 minutes left on this topic.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to make the comment about Keynesian economics, even though I don't really think that's what we're doing right now. I have to harken back to FDR and the Great Depression and ask, what economic policies were used to get us out of the Great Depression. Anybody who's taken like an econ class, friendly reminder, it was Keynesian economics that got us out of the worst economic crisis of this nation's history, right? Huh? Yeah. So to assert that like an irrelevant economic policy is what's causing the issue today, even though that economic policy literally got us out of the Great Depression. A democratic policy, by the way, it caused a literal century-long realignment of the American political sphere with the sweeping victories of the Democrats after that election of FDR implementing those policies.
All right, Eric.
Okay, so I just have to lay the smackdown on this rumor, this myth that FDR suddenly, he came to power and then, he issued the New Deal and then the Great Depression just ended. That is such a lie. Okay, Herbert Hoover was president. He was a Republican. I'll be the first to admit this. When you account for deflation, he more than doubled government spending in response to the recession in 1929. He increased the top tax rate to over 67%, which was more than double it, okay? He increased regulation. He was jawboning, which means he was intervening in labor markets. FDR took all this, and FDR actually campaigned on cutting taxes and cutting government spending. And when FDR got into office, he did a 180. And he increased taxes. By the time World War II came around, it was almost 90%, okay, your top tax rate. And the unemployment rate going, just before World War II was still in the double digits. There was still a terrible economic recession, okay? So the economy did not recover under FDR. That is a total lie.
No. We saw, there's like a really famous one, like the bridge chart, where since FDR took office, right, and the New Deal policies came through, we saw the lowest amount of inequality in our history. And then as soon as Reagan actually took office, it started rising again. We see that when we have government redistribution of wealth, although we completely lost the top of inflation, we see lower inequality and better results for everybody. That was when we grew the most as a country during the 50s. We had the lowest inequality and the highest top tax rates. But back to inflation and the Fed is amazing. What? Recently we've been slowly increasing the top interest rates so that we could have a soft landing. We had all this inflation. I would argue that causing the inflation was necessary to save people's lives, and that now we've been trying to reduce it by the Fed increasing interest rates very slowly and giving us a soft landing. That has been really good.
Anyone want to ask something? Go ahead.
So, quick issue I have with you saying that the inequality is what made us how strong we were is the fact that half the world was blown out at the time. You had all of Europe, which used to be the major economic power before World War II. The United States was the banker of World War I, correct, but we also caused the crisis by calling all the loans back. Europe still played a major part in the world economy at the time, and the fact that they got all blown out, not just the lowering of inequality between the classes helped us come back. You can blame a lot of our comeback on the war, on the fact that we were reclaiming loans from other nations and then also helping assert ourselves as an economic power across the world because we did things like the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe and made Europe more favorable to us in trading motions. All of those, and this also harkens back to the New Deal thing. New Deal did help in my mind. I do believe it helped. But World War II was a major factor in our economic rise and boom, so you can't say it was all FDR, more of nice circumstances.
All right, we have 30 seconds, so last speaker from this side.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point that the war helped. The United States did this really cool thing, the most prominent policy during the war, which also happened to be under FDR, called the Land Lease Act, right, where we supplied money, supplies, and whatnot to our allies overseas, right? Part of the inflation issue right now is also the war in Ukraine, right? Putting all those sanctions on Russia and having the war be in Eastern Europe has caused a huge increase in costs. And what has Joe Biden's policy been to help with that? Bring back the Land Lease Act.
All right, we're going to move on to the next question. Thank you very much for that. What should the future of abortion access look like in Florida? And once again, we ask everyone to remain respectful. Please, for the sake of civility.
Yes, we are discussing ideas, not individual
Yeah.
It's this many centimeters off. Does it have certain organs, have certain limbs? Where do we decide that it's okay to kill that life and then it's not okay? That's what I think is so important here. And again, it's like personal responsibility. I mean, you're not using protection, contraceptives, whatever, right? You know what's going to happen, so why do you not have to take personal responsibility for your actions? So I think in the state of Florida, we should be very strict on that. Obviously, if the mother's health is in danger, or maybe something's going to happen like that, then we should be very careful. But otherwise, why should you be able to kill the life? No consequences because you're acting stupidly.
I'm somebody who leans on the conservative side, but I'm actually pro-choice for 3 different reasons. One, and this is something that maybe some on the left will disagree with, I'm actually in favor of eugenics. As somebody...
Hey, let him speak.
As somebody who thinks that in the future we should strive to be the best versions of ourselves, I'd like to see a future where people who have the conditions that I've had, knowing the shortcomings I've had to face, don't have to deal with these conditions anymore. And the only way we can get towards that is to build a future where the people that populate, because at the end of the day, we can have these abstract debates, but what does politics boil down to? It's the people on the ground. It's the people that, all of us, and at the end of the day, if we're wanting a society where it's the best among us and where we could be as better off as possible, we need to think towards the future. Are we going to go out of our way to restrict abortion? And it's funny, because some of the Republicans who will complain about violent crime, what happens when, I'm adopted actually too, actually. So what would happen if someone like me, who didn't get to have a family who adopted me with good conditions, grew up in a world where I didn't have any good resources, where I might even be incentivized to commit crimes? You guys, the people who are pro-life, are going to create the same problems they complain about at the end of the day. And they're not thinking about it.
Sorry.
I have ADHD and I'm
That
glad
had skipped hands. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I just.
I have ADHD. I'm glad I'm alive, and I don't feel like I'm any more susceptible to crime than someone else. So.
Well, maybe we were born off in a privileged situation. Same here. But if we're not privileged and we were born
Who's
in poverty,
Hold on. Let's keep responses to hands, please, if it's that. So go ahead, Miss.
That was about it. And I also say the vast majority of the resources that have helped me are ones I found online or through podcasts with mental health professionals, entirely free.
I'd like to stay away from the eugenics side. I think that will just completely derail us. Yeah, abortion is just something that should be accessible to anyone who wants it. I mean, abortion is a good thing. I mean, you're not killing a baby. Nobody's going to a baby just like, just killing it. No, it's not a baby. It's growing inside. It's not a human life yet. And the question of where do we draw the line, I don't know. I'm not there to make that choice. That should be between doctors, the government, and scientists. That's not for us, just the government to decide. So,
What about the woman?
I was just going to say, for limited government, we're for limited government. Okay? Just like you said, it's between a woman and her doctor, and that's it.
All right, we got 50 seconds left. Who wants to go? Go ahead.
You're not killing a baby, yes, the last one from the lectures. But life is a life. Doesn't matter what kind of life you live. Life is a life. You are going to kill anyone. Even if it's a human, even if it's an animal, doesn't matter. It is a life. You are just bringing his right to life. And my English is not so good. I cannot speak a lot. That's why I'm saying life is a life. You cannot bring the life to from him. Doesn't matter from him, from her. Doesn't matter.
So I feel like you could draw the line at like consciousness, because if we pull the plug on people with coma, I guess we could do the same with something that's not conscious yet inside of mother's body.
We got 45 seconds left.
Well, okay, I'll just make a small point. You do have to take personal responsibility if you have a baby. I mean, I had to pay $200 to get rid of my mistake. I mean, yeah. If you talk about personal responsibility, you're talking about like you have to deal with problems. Yeah, you do. You have to deal with the problems the way you need to deal with them, the way it's best for your health. Whether it's your mental health, your physical health, your monetary health.
All right. Go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the Republican Party has it wrong on this one. I think abortion should be a choice between a woman and her doctor. And I'm not saying it should just run rampant. I think, especially after you hit the point of the weeks of viability, like where a baby can survive outside of the womb. But we are the party of limited government, of personal responsibility, of freedom. And I think abortion is an issue that we are losing ground on. And it's something that we could use to help. I mean, everything in politics is about winning elections. And it's something that we need to shift our focus on.
5 seconds.
All right, guys. So kind of personal. I'm really gonna be vulnerable with y'all. My mother was 15 years old when she gave birth to me, and I was adopted at and you know, I don't see it much as a left-right issue, but more as like my potentiality for life being there, and the fact that I can like experience what I'm experiencing and talk to all you guys today. So long as I'm alive, I'll always stick up for that right to left.
So we can keep having more speakers. Yeah, so about, like, aside from personal anecdotes, it's not about supporting people to have abortions, right? We're only providing the option to have an abortion, which is a great distinction. It's about providing that choice for a woman. That's it.
I want to respond to that. I think, yeah, you're right. It is about a choice. But actually, they've done surveys on women, and a lot of women who choose to go in and actually find out their options actually feel pressured into getting abortions. They're not really offered like any really other options other than, yeah, you know, have this baby vacuumed out of you, you know. And there needs to be some, if you guys are genuine about your argument, there needs to be a middle ground where women truly are offered resources. And the pro-choice side always says they're pro-choice, but they only ever advocate for solutions for abortion. They never advocate for solutions for what if she chooses to keep the baby, right? It's pro-choice, but I never see any advocacy for, you know, let's have more programs for single mothers. You know, let's offer more, you know, free diapers. Planned Parenthood doesn't offer free diapers, you know. Planned Parenthood, there's very few Planned Parenthoods that actually offer the full range of prenatal services. They only offer, you know, abortion. And so I just think it's really ingenuine when you say, oh, well, we're pro-choice, we support the woman either way, but there's only ever arguments made for the abortion side of it.
Planned Parenthood does a lot more than just do abortions. Like a hell of a lot more than do abortions.
I wasn't arguing
against
Planned
I don't care. Second of all, Planned Parenthood is an one of the main things it does do is provide abortions. It doesn't have to do the other things. And there are a lot of liberal ideas to give poor people more money. First of all, you're talking about pressuring. I'm a clinic escort. There are people yelling at the people, making them cry going into the abortion clinic, saying don't have the baby. There are also federally funded programs to set up fake abortion clinics next to abortion clinics where the entire goal is saying no, you shouldn't have an abortion, right? And when you're attacking the ability for somebody to choose what they want to do with their body, right? Then that's to promote the idea that you can do with your body. It's not promoting abortion. It's promoting the choice to do with your body. You're just attacking that, and you're saying that we are being too defensive.
So I want to respond to the argument someone said about the standard being consciousness, and they compared it to a person in a coma. But I want to ask you this. If you knew that the person in the coma
would gain consciousness later and they would have a fully healthy life after that, then you would not be in favor of pulling the plug. And it's the same deal with the fetus. If the fetus is left up to its own devices, it will gain consciousness later on as a fully grown human.
I just want to say I'm tired of the debate about what makes a life or not. What makes someone a life is if they're actually alive. Like a mother who is pregnant, that is someone who needs to have a choice and have bodily autonomy. People are debating if something is alive at conception or when it has a heartbeat or whatever. Someone who is already alive and conscious needs to have that choice. And people who say they're pro-life and don't support social services, like you were saying, for babies who are born and need to have a good life, you're pro-birth. You're about controlling women, and it's not about saving lives of unborn babies.
2 minutes. All right, go ahead. Okay, so I would just like to respond to that argument real quick. When I was the president of the Students for Life Club, we found a pregnant homeless lady, and and we threw for her a baby shower. Nobody had ever done something like that for her. Her name is Shanika, okay? And so we threw a baby shower for her, and we helped her. We found her a charity that would provide her shelter and work, not only for her, but for her baby too. So the idea that people who are pro-life are only pro-birth is a total fabrication. Life begins at conception when there's unique human DNA. It doesn't matter, you're a human, kind of like the words of Dr. Seuss. You're a human, it doesn't matter how big or small you are. You're a human, you have unique DNA. It doesn't matter if you're 1 cell or a billion. You are, you're alive, you're human. And you have the right to life, okay? It's that person's, it's that, even if it's 1 cell, it's that 1 cell's body. You're not deciding for yourself. You're deciding to kill someone else. You're deciding to end somebody else. So.
All right, we have time for one more. We'll let.
I want to touch on that real quick because I'm just going to completely concede. I think the line is completely arbitrary, right? There's no specific point. I think it's important to distinguish that a life is someone with experienced events in their life, and babies don't really have that, or at least not babies, fetuses, whatever you want to call them. There's another weird point that you guys made. I don't know why you guys make weird points over there about if you on the aborting a baby is like unplugging a person in a coma, right? Why you unplug the coma or you unplug the person from the coma because you don't think they're going to wake up. So I don't know why it would be a matter of if you knew that they were going to wake up, because you wouldn't unplug them then, right? That's not really part of it. I do want to ask though, I think it's really important to distinguish that low-income people are consistently faced with having to get abortions, and that there really isn't a lot of programs and services for these single mothers in low-income situations who have to seek out abortions, right? What exactly is the Republican plan to help these single mothers that doesn't involve welfare?
I mean,
we just showed it with the charity. I mean, charity work and bringing, helping these people. But anyways, fine. All right.
Also, a life left is.
If we're gonna move on, we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to the next, the final question of the night.
I'm not going to talk to everything.
This is the last question.
Yeah. All right, so this is the last topic, y'all. Thank you for staying with us this whole time. We got one more to go through.
All right. So, what should the future